There's one place to be this July. We welcome you to the Hill Nation Summit. For 30 years, the Hill has been the agenda-setting read for lawmakers and policy influencers inside the Beltway and beyond.
Hopefully the future of an airport, where I'm looking to go, is that you walk in the door with your carry-on suitcase, you walk through a scanner and go right to your flight.
Joining forces with News Nation, a network where left and right come to be reasonable.
There is not a bipartisan piece of legislation that I've not been in the room on.
With back-to-back newsmaker interviews in front of a live audience in Washington, D.C. and streaming nationally.
It's a tough time to be a Democrat in Washington right now. What's one thing you're hoping for?
The fact that I'm going to outlive a lot of the people who are against me.
We dive into the events shaping politics and policy today. It's a community where those in the know and those in power meet. Register your interest for the 2026 Hill Nation Summit by scanning this QR code. See you in July.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We have a lot more newsmakers coming up and encourage you all to stick around for lunch at noon, which is provided by Climate Power. Now here to talk AI governance and responsibility is Navrina Singh, founder and CEO of Credo AI. Please welcome her to the stage. Thank you. Okay. Navrina, thank you for trekking out here to be with us. I want to start by just asking you to kind of explain for us and contextualize what Credo AI does and what the gap was that you saw that needed to be filled.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. Credo AI is a venture-backed startup. We provide AI governance software that enables trustworthy AI at scale. So what that means is we provide tooling to enterprises so that they can supervise, control, and prove everything from security, reliability, compliance, and quality of AI systems. I started this company 5.5 years ago, wow. And I think the big thing was, having worked in AI prior to that for 15 plus years, saw that there was a pretty big gap that was emerging between AI capabilities and accountability. And nobody was really thinking about where the puck is going and how this trust gap is going to become one of the core reasons why AI won't be successful. So 5.5 years ago, started Credo AI to really create that shared understanding of how do you measure trust, how do you define it, and how do you enable AI capabilities at scale.
So you were early on to this. Talk about the difference. We've had a lot of conversation up here about the regulation side, the regulatory side. Talk about the difference between governance, which is the area that you live in, and regulation.
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting because in the past 5.5 years, we've noticed that there's a pretty big myth that governance is regulation. And it's not. Regulation is one of the components of governance. Governance is all about understanding risk within these systems, mitigating those risks, understanding how do you actually prove quality of products so that you can build that customer trust, that you can actually have reliable systems that are operating at scale. And then, yes, certainly compliance is a component of it, but compliance not just to very fragmented regulations, but also standards. And those standards can come from company policies and internal guardrails.
And you work with a lot of different customers, some of them very big name brands. What are some of the kind of the blind spots that they have when they start engaging with you?
Yeah. So little bit context there. We work with enterprises, multi-billion-dollar enterprises in financial services, pharma, healthcare, CPG, retail, oil and gas, and we do a lot of work with governments as well. And I would say that the biggest three things that we've seen is, one, there's an assumption that AI is one thing. it's actually a pretty complex system. Everything from the vendors you're using to the systems that you're building, which might have multiple models, multiple data sets. And the complexity really demands continuous embedded oversight rather than something that's bolted on towards the end, right when you're trying to put something in practice. The second big myth that we've seen is that let's wait on governance. We don't have to do it at the beginning. And I think that's such a false mindset because a lot of things start going wrong when you're designing these systems. So the sooner you catch it, the more you can guarantee the quality of these systems, the reliability of these systems. And I think the third thing that is a pretty big myth is if there's compliance requirements, only then I have to do governance. And we have seen again and again, so for example, one of the largest retail clients of ours, they launched a customer service chatbot in production, and within the first hour, it started to recommend competitor products. Now, imagine that. You're losing 100 million worth of value because you didn't ensure that oversight and governance happen. And so that's why they brought in Credo AI to start solving some of those challenges so that you're not losing customer trust, you're not losing quality, and you're not certainly getting into the regulatory crossfires as well.
That chatbot is a great example. And you argue that having governance in place, having the right guardrails in place is actually going to lead to better experimentation, better deployment. It's a little bit counterintuitive because I think a lot of people see it as something that would slow down a company. But talk a little bit more about what some other examples here and why you think it's so important to get this right from the get-go before you start deploying.
You know, we are, just in the past 5.5 years, Michal, we have seen that all these enterprises, they're actually leaning pretty heavily on third-party AI systems. That means they're buying a lot of applications from vendors, and they don't even know which vendors are actually using AI agents, et cetera. And so as an example, one of the largest financial services, MasterCard, they've been our client for many, many years. They use Credo AI for evaluation of all their third-party vendors. And what they are finding is very quickly, based on those evaluations, they can determine, is this vendor trustworthy enough for them to bring into their ecosystem and make their employees use these tools or not. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty big thing because you're either buying trust or you're buying liability. So a lot of times we are observing that the third-party risk assessment, which, by the way, has just gotten more and more complex. If you look at the AI bill of materials for any vendor, it's complex. So how do you actually break that down, understand the risk, and manage it? And then secondly, you know, one of our other government clients is using Credo AI for not only ensuring that everything that they're building meets the OMB guidance, which is in place, but they're also making sure that it's delivering quality at scale, especially if you think about applications like chatbots for Veterans Affairs. Are you actually recommending the right benefits to veterans who absolutely deserve the best care? How do you actually make sure those guardrails are in place to serve that stakeholder becomes very critical.
You mentioned how complex this whole ecosystem is, and it's also moving very fast, right? So how do you at Credo and your people make sure that you're staying on top of everything and are able to vet?
Yeah, so 3 ways. One is, we have an internal mandate. We use each and every AI tool that comes out in the market because I'm a big believer you can't govern something you don't use and you don't understand. And we do have a benefit at Credo AI that everyone comes from AI background, so the AI literacy already was very high. The second thing is we actually take all the third-party tools at Credo AI, the ones that we use, through our product as well, because we want to make sure that everything that we make a decision to use and buy, we understand the risk of those systems. We understand what is potentially the compliance posture of those systems. And then the third thing, which is, I would say, really critical for us is we truly have a multi-stakeholder team. So it's not just the technical evaluations, but it's the policy perspective. It is really thinking from the customer perspective in terms of, is our governance tool actually providing that trust and defining that trust for the enterprises appropriately?
Can you give us a little bit of a state of the state as you look out, not just your customers, obviously, which by default have prioritized governance, but kind of the corporate landscape in the US right now? What grade would you give, Fortune 500 companies, for example, when it comes to having the right governance in place on AI?
That's a great question. I worry about giving a blanket score, but I would rate it pretty low. And the reason for that is not just, one, we are finding that the AI literacy, even in the largest enterprises that are using a lot of AI, the AI literacy is pretty low. And so again, you might be using a lot of productivity tools, but as you start embedding these AI tools into mission-critical business applications, do you actually understand what is needed to make it enterprise grade? So I would say that we are not seeing that level of AI literacy among most of the enterprises. The second is, I think if you look at the investments in AI innovation versus AI governance, I don't even have to share the numbers, but it's like 0.001% goes to governance and guardrails versus the billions of dollars that's going into AI innovation. And we are seeing a massive trend shift, and going into 2026, that governance is going to become embedded in the critical workflows. So hopefully we'll see the capital investments in governance increase. And then the third thing is, I really believe that right now organizations are a little bit chaotic because they have a lot of shadow AI, which is AI that they don't even know exists and that their employees are using. So when you don't have a single system of record to understand where AI is being used internally in your organization, you're just increasing your risk surface area, your threat area. And most of the organizations don't even have that single system of record. And so that's why they use Credo AI to get that single, pane of governance, a single system of record. But I would say most of the organizations, again, I don't want to score it, but they're in very early innings of that journey.
What are some other early steps that companies need to take? And you just mentioned one of them having that system of record, but what else are you advising them as you engage with new clients?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is having that early visibility into both shadow and sanctioned AI is really critical through registries. Second is, I think, understanding that AI is not one thing. So how do you actually look at and evaluate whether it's vendors or internally built embedded AI applications is the second core thing. The third is, again, I'm a big advocate for AI literacy because, again, you can't govern something that you don't understand. And then lastly, having a common definition of what does good look like for your business. Because if you as an enterprise are going to wait for regulations or compliance to show up only then when you're acting on it, what ends up happening is, I think it's too late to the game. So you have to define what does good standard for you as a business mean. What do you care about? Do you care about good quality products? Having that brand recognition? Do you care about only regulatory compliance? Do you care about really highly reliable systems, especially in mission critical applications? So I think really defining that and defining internal standards becomes critical.
I want to get back to this kind of balance between innovation and governance. And we've talked a lot on stage about the US-China AI race. You flagged recently that the US risks falling behind China in the AI race if it doesn't adopt stricter safety standards. And again, regulation being just a part of overall governance. Can you explain that? Because again, I think that's counterintuitive to a lot of people. I think a lot of people see it as like, wait, this is going to significantly slow us down.
Yeah, it's really interesting. After spending like a long time, half a decade on this topic, I'm still surprised that innovation and governance are seen at tension with each other. They're actually the same thing. And the reason they're the same thing is you as a business or us as a country are not going to deploy systems that you can't trust, you can't rely on, that are not highly secure, that don't have high quality. So it's all about product quality and how much confidence do you have that you're going to get the outcomes with these AI systems. So I think, and then that is all the job of governance. So governance is ensuring you have the supervision, you have the controls. It does not have to be elaborate policies. It just has to be making sure your product quality, reliability, security is met at scale. And if you can't have AI systems that can, serve with that high level of trust, how are you going to win? So I think for me, like I always am perplexed when either this narrative around governance is going to slow you down. I mean, we've seen from history, cybersecurity, DevSecOps, all those is all about having a framework to make faster decisions. And AI governance is that framework to make faster decisions to ensure quality, reliability, security of these AI systems.
You mentioned cyber. I'm curious to hear what can we learn from other technologies, from other, maybe not even technologies, but financial auditing, sort of just other parts of what a corporation has to do, the aspects that we already are used to governing, to measuring, to auditing. What are the learnings there?
A lot. So I would say, if you think about, even from the financial sector, you have these different levels of audit requirements and oversight and risk requirements. And we are seeing that similarly in cybersecurity, if you make that an enterprise priority, if you actually have your board ask for that independent audit of these AI systems, if you're actually ensuring third-party evaluation, something that we've been very excited about in the AI action plan is the requirement or the need for standards and evaluation. I think that's just going to become more and more paramount as we especially go into this agentic world. You have these agents getting launched and doing a lot of autonomous actions. How do you evaluate the quality of those systems? So I think there's a lot of lessons from especially cybersecurity that we are now bringing into, and even privacy that we are bringing into AI governance, from third-party audit, third-party evaluations, robust standards, enterprise requirements, and the need for independent audit at the enterprise level.
And by the way, who's bringing you into these companies? Where does it come from? Is it the board level? Is it?
Yeah. So I would say, and mostly it's a top-down mandate. And I think first and foremost, we are seeing that because the brands we work with are massive global enterprises, the boards are sort of waking up to the recognition that they can't play, defense. They have to be the firefighters in this, dictating what that AI strategy is. And a big part of that AI strategy is having the right governance. The second is also, I would say, C-level. So we work a lot with chief data officers, CIOs, little bit now CISOs as well. And what's becoming very clear is they understand that it is not going to be the remit of one functional tower. AI is so cross-functional. You're using AI in hiring, you're using it for third-party risk management, you're using it for customer support, you're using it for fraud. So when AI is impacting so many business lines, it becomes a very multi-stakeholder initiative. So we are seeing at the executive level councils getting formed around AI to really inform not only the strategy, but also what the guardrails and reliability metrics are going to look like.
You talked about the regulatory piece being just that, a piece of kind of overall governance, but it's a critical one. What are most of the companies you speak with, what are they looking for when it comes to more of a concrete framework, federal or state level?
It's interesting because it really depends upon, are they in regulated or unregulated sector? So if you are coming from a regulated sector, it is important part of the business. And what they're really looking for is more context and use case specific guardrails. Because again, if you're using a foundation model, which by very nature is dual purpose, can be applied to multiple different applications, it doesn't matter just the guardrails that you have at the model level. You have to start thinking about when that model is applied to, let's say, a predictive portfolio management system versus a customer support management system, what are the guardrails you need to have in place? So most of, I would say, the regulated clients are looking for context and use case specific guardrails and standards. On the unregulated side, I would say it's a little bit of Wild West right now, because they are really just looking to understand, how do I create the baseline for what is a good governance and risk management mechanism for AI look like? and before they start getting into the use case and context-specific guardrails.
Okay, and then real quick, you mentioned the example of the chatbot who was recommending competitive products. Give us just a real brief example of an innovation, some kind of feature application that you've seen from one of your customers that you think, having the right guardrails, the right governance in place allowed.
Yeah, so one of our customers is in hiring. And they've actually used a lot of AI, not just predictive ML, but true like Gen AI applications to make hiring decisions. And what has been really interesting is I would say that their AI systems actually are helping look across demographic profiles much more effectively to recommend talent for the companies. Because previously, if you're hiring for, let's say, an engineering role, maybe most likely you would not be picking certain demographics over others. So I think they've done a phenomenal job in, again, evaluating on reliability, fairness, transparency across these systems so that their hiring systems are making much more effective decisions.
Well, Navrina, thank you so much. You have a way of making governance sound so interesting, so I appreciate you being here with us.
Well, I hope it is interesting going into 2026.
It's certainly important.
Thank you.
Thank you.